This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 126 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we were joined by longtime sports radio personality and now former WFAN host Brandon Tierney. After about 4 years on WFAN in middays, BT and Licata, unfortunately, they lost their spot in the lineup when the station made room for Craig Carton again this month. And BT joins us this week to discuss his more than 20 years in radio, and including this most recent time on WFAN. We talked about learning the show was coming to an end, but still continuing to host for a few weeks, even though he knew WFAN was moving on, and just being able to balance the emotions of leaving with wanting to still turn out a great product at the end. BT also talked about his relationship with Licata. He talked about his relationship with Stephen A. Smith and getting to work with him earlier in his career on ESPN 1050. And then we talked about his relationship with Mike Francesa, which includes getting hit in the chest with a golf ball recently, an explosive argument in the halls of WFAN 10 years ago, but they still share a lot of mutual respect for each other today. And then we talked about BT's current venture, which is his YouTube channel that already has 13,000 subscribers since he launched it just a few weeks ago, and all the excitement, but the challenges that still come with starting something new. It was a great conversation with somebody who has been in sports radio for a very long time. He reached the pinnacle at WFAN, and now he's looking to continue carving his own path. So please make sure you rate and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page and enjoy this week's episode of the Awful Announcing Podcast with guest Brandon Tierney. All right, he is a longtime sports radio personality, having hosted nationally and locally where he worked the last 4 years on WFAN. Now you can catch him on his recently launched YouTube channel every weekday morning at 10 a.m. He is Brandon Tierney. BT, thanks so much for joining the Awful Announcing Podcast today. Look, I'm sure it ended sooner than you had hoped or initially expected, but how do you look back on and how do you categorize those 4 years on WFAN?
Well, first of all, nice to be with you. So Happy New Year to everybody. I think we've hit the expiration on Happy New Year, but I'm throwing out there for you just in case.
Yeah, there you go.
Listen, I look back on my run at the fan with great fondness. I really do. One of the things that I talked about this certainly is as I was trying to fight my way through some emotions, my final segment on my final show, where, you know, the beautiful thing for me was that I was able to touch WFAN. And, you know, it's a little different now where, you know, you can start a podcast and kind of carve out a different path to create content. But when I was coming up, when I graduated school, the real, I don't want to say the real way, but I think the road that was most traveled by many people who were aspiring to be on the air was that you had to start in small markets and kind of work your way around and move your way up. And I did. And I took a very well-traveled road through Pennsylvania, through Las Vegas, through Detroit, to New York at 1050 for basically a decade, and then out to San Francisco, and then back to CBS to help with the national stuff, which was about 10 years with Tiki, and then a little bit more than a 3-year run on the fan. And as I was saying during the final segment, and I meant it, you know, like when every broadcasting aspiration that I initially had, and really throughout all of those stops that I just chronicled, the goal was always to be on the fan. So to get there, to do well, to feel it, to live it, to experience it, it was amazing. And I didn't want it to end. I didn't think it was necessarily going to end. That's out of my control, and we can certainly get into that stuff. But I will always look back on my time at the fan with great fondness. It was something that I had to do to, I guess in my own way, validate my journey. And I was able to do it. I punched through and I had a blast, and it was really, really good.
Yeah. And I thought the ending, I mean, obviously as difficult as it was, I'm sure. And we'll talk about just how it ended and things like that. But the way that you were able to show your emotion, but still kind of be respectful to WFAN and turn out a good product. Like that's not those aren't easy things to balance.
No, that's not something that you learn in journalism school.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Now, first of all, I would not have had the chance to even attempt to find that balance if they didn't let me stay on the air.
Yeah.
And I think that's equity within the company. That's a trust. I trust them. They trust me. And it was with great gratitude that I look back and say, okay, I'm at least able to finish the race on my terms. And that was incredibly meaningful to me. And it wasn't one day. It wasn't one segment. It wasn't one show. It was, kind of a prolonged, stretched out goodbye. And, when Sal and I were still together, our main goal, and he had his last day, and I wanted to do some more shows. And by the way, he's been grinding, doing the radio, and then obviously going to SNY, and I did that dance years ago where I was doing my radio show at 1050, going to SNY, suiting up, doing a TV show, getting up and doing it. And by the way, also juggling the Knicks and St. John. So I get it. I understood his decision. I just wanted more shows to do because, number one, I wanted more shows to do. I had more to say. And, it's December. I mean, if it was in the middle of the summer, maybe I would have had a different mindset. Maybe I would have done one or two more shows, go play some golf, decompress. But for me to just sit in my house and stare at the Christmas tree was not anything I had any remote interest in doing. So, there was a lot of things at play. And our focus when it was still the two of us was, let's just do the show, man. Do the show. People are going to call up and praise us. And invariably, when people do that, they denigrate others. And we weren't going to have that. We weren't going to allow people to come on and say, oh, this show, and why didn't they get rid of this guy? That's not what I'm about. And, candidly, if it would have morphed into that, then maybe my company would have had a different response and maybe said, hey, maybe this isn't the best way to go. So I was very mindful of that. And I'm not a spiteful person. I've been taught, from my parents, you deal with what you have to deal with, and you put your best foot forward. It sounds corny. It sounds cliche. But when it's ingrained in you at an early age, it's easier, not easy, because it was not easy emotionally. It's easier to do it. It's easier to navigate those things when you're already predisposed to have that mindset. And maybe at various points in my life without even knowing it, and certainly not to that public degree. I had some experience with that where it prepared me to strike that balance. All right, we're doing a show. It's still going to be BT and Sal. And then when it's me, it's just going to be me. And I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. I'm going to pump out some real content. We're going to get a little nostalgic when the moment calls for it. And I'm going to empty the tank. Like the one thing that I've learned, whether it's a speech I remember my parents' 50th anniversary or, a wake or not to be morbid, but when there's a moment where there's really things that are really important to you, you want to make sure that you say them. They might not come out necessarily the way that you envision because you can't control the emotions fully. But I think for me, I would have had real regret if I didn't delve into some of the things that I was so willing to delve into, where I was incredibly vulnerable. I mean, that's something else that you can't prepare for. Like you can learn how to structure a show and learn how to balance reads and taking calls. And we got a technical issue. All right, my producer in my ear or my engineer working this and working with a partner and juggling 9,000 topics and all like that you get through repetition. But there's really nothing that there's no batting practice for going on the air and saying goodbye. And the reason why I thought it was why I was so emotional, number one, I love the place and I always aspire to be there, as everybody knows that, right? But also because in my mind, now you never know what's going to happen down the road. I've got a great relationship with them, but in my mind, I was kind of saying goodbye to New York in my at least pertaining to conventional terrestrial radio. Again, you never know what the future holds. You just don't know. But I wanted to make sure that I captured. It was just important for me. Like I've always been motivated by not feeling the adulation of the fans. That's never been my motivation. My motivation's always been to be great or the best at what I do. Whatever my ceiling is, to maximize it. But it was also incredibly important for people to know how much I cherished and how much I valued that real estate. And I think that certainly came through, and I was really proud of that. It was tough, though. It was tough.
And I do think it came through, and I think it resonated with the audience. And it's weird to say, but I do think some of those shows where when you knew that you weren't coming back, but you were sort of saying goodbye and showing some emotion. I do think those were probably some of your best shows that you actually had on WFAN, and it was tough circumstances. I think it was last June when Stephen A. Smith had announced that he was going to be joining Mad Dog Sports Radio, replacing Michelle Beadle and Cody Decker.
Yeah, remember.
They took a very different approach. Like
Mm-hmm.
they ripped Stephen A. They called out the company and management. Then they were off air the next day. And I think the biggest difference is at that point they had said that they were blindsided by the news. But was there any urge or desire to be bitter during your final shows?
No, not really. I was transparent, and I said it then, and I'll say it now. Like, BT and Sal is the kind of show that should be on WFAN. Like, to me, that's the essence of a WFAN show. You've got the old school, tenacity. You've got the element of unpredictability. You really never knew what one of us was going to say. We didn't pull punches. We didn't carry the water for teams. I thought we had a really good rapport with the listeners, and really, I think once, and it wasn't easy right away, but I think once we found our stride as a show, I think then we became, I won't say great. I'll let others say that. That's not what I'm here to do. But I think once we became the best version of us is what I'm trying to say. I think that it sounded the way I always envisioned a WFAN show with me included in it sounding. And I told Sal that. I told him that in my last segment. I told him that off the air. Like, to me, I've had a lot of really good partners. You mentioned Stephen A. Stephen A. was one of my first partners when his ascent was just starting. I was in the same studio with Stephen in 2005 and 2006. And it's all 20 years ago. I mean, in the 20 years since, think about what he's become. I was in the studio with Tiki for 10 years, who was a steady, smart, reasonable gentleman, and had a lot of good conversations with him, especially during COVID, about the world and some real life things that were going down that I thought he and I needed to tap into. And he's an easy person to do that with because he's open-minded like me. And we were able to get through that together because we had a real trust and we had a good rapport. But the show with Sal was just different. I think it sounded different. Maybe if you go back to, and I don't even know if they have any, I don't even know if I could find these, but like, I'm sure if I found the Stephen A. clip where he and I are going back and forth on Isaiah or the Yankees, whatever, I'm sure the combustibility and, that throwback old school rate, I know that surfaced.
Yeah.
But day to day, you really just had two guys in that studio who always aspired to be there and worked their asses off to get there, with a lot of side turns and a lot of different stops and unexpected successes on my end and some unexpected setbacks on both of our ends. And I think when you have that kind of a duo, and then you have the chemistry to match, and you both have that unflinching, not even desire, that mission to make the show sound the way we both thought it was supposed to sound, you're not going to do anything to sabotage that relationship, certainly with the audience or with our bosses. Listen, Chris Olivero brought me to launch the network in 2013 with Tiki, right? I mean, I was in that building 13 years. I'm walking in those doors at 345 Hudson. And, Chris was always a great liaison for me in the business, a great confidant, and really a great champion of mine. Like, Chris was always a fan of my talents and always a believer in what I did. And he always wanted to get me there. And I remember, it's funny. This came up, I think, with Max somewhat recently, where Max was talking about how he almost became partners with Mike Francesa.
Yep.
Now, I've never quite said I almost became partners with Mike, but I did sit down and have lunch with Mike. Now, what I didn't do was go out there. I'm not even saying Max did this. I'm just getting back to me. And there were a few other names. I think Simmons' name was mentioned. Maybe Stephen's name was floated for a minute.
Stephen A's name was mentioned. Yep.
Stephen A. and rightfully so. I purposely had my agent suppress it. Like, and in hindsight, I don't know. Maybe, going back all these years, maybe it would have built up my profile earlier. Maybe it would have changed the way I'm perceived. But I remember having lunch with Mike Francesa when the fan was still in Queens, the old studios, Kaufman Studios, and I was working at 1050. I'm under contract, and it was just myself. It was Mike, and it was Mark Chernoff at a diner in Queens, right? And I remember, I'll tell you, this was hysterical. I'm still fairly young, and I wouldn't say that I was nervous, but it's Mike Francesa that you're sitting down with, and you're not sitting down just to shoot the breeze about the Yankees bullpen from the night before. You know that there's at least a potential opening on some level. To what extent, I never found out. I never got that far. But anyway, I sit down with Mike, and I don't have a good Mike impersonation, but I'll never forget. He starts out, and Mike's not very animated unless he gets worked up about something on the radio. He's like, let me ask you something. He goes, I think I think you're pretty good. He goes, matter of fact, I think you're the only good one there at the station. He gets his little jab in, of course, at 10:50. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there were some pretty talented people there, but that was his assertion, right? I'm like, all right, I'm just kind of waiting for an opening to respond. And he goes, so let me ask you this. He goes, for somebody who's got talent like you do, how come your ratings suck? That's what he says. Now, I'm doing the night show. I'm on a station that you can't even hear in Long Island and certain parts of Manhattan and, a certain place on the Bell Parkway.
Yeah, certainly not at night. You could get 1050 on Long Island sometimes during the day, but at night it was even harder.
Yes, it was. So I just remember, and I'm like, all right, this is kind of a point of inflection here. And again, because I was younger and maybe a little less sure of my place in the business, I'm saying to myself very quickly, because I got to process this and give an answer. And I'm like, all right, is he baiting me? Like, well, how do I respond to this? I'm like, screw it. I'm just gonna be honest here. And I said, all right. I said, you want to be honest? I'm going to tell you. I said, number one, nobody could hear me. Number one. I said, our station, our frequency's awful. Nobody could hear us. And then that was my way to kind of defend myself, because I already knew that he liked what I was doing. And the realities of some of the things that were holding us back, not to mention FAN, an absolute monster. We had just burst on the scene. No real equity in the city. You couldn't hear us. All those things that I just mentioned. It was really interesting. So, and I say that because, Chris Olivero, even back then, was obviously running the Fan. So he's always been a believer in my talents. It didn't go anywhere with Mike, but that's not the point. The point is really, in a roundabout way of answering your question as thoroughly as I can, there was never thought once, even if there was something that was said that I agreed with. And, there were certain things that if I wanted to go in, I could have. It would have been my last show, and I would have taken a blowtorch to the place, and that's not my style. I just elected not to do it. Younger me, I still don't think that I would have done it. But where I am now, as a dad, as a husband, in my early 50s, obviously I know the business. I know what's right, what's wrong. That was just never an option. I wasn't going there. From a competitive point of view, on some level that I knew I never would tap into, would it have felt cathartic a little bit? I mean, maybe. But what would that have proven? What would that have accomplished except probably make me look petty in the grand scheme? So it was never an option. No.
We obviously learned about it. I think it was early December when the news broke that Carton was likely coming back, and you guys were likely out. When did you first learn that the show with Sal was probably coming to an end?
Well, it was never that specific, and I'm gonna listen. I've given the company credit for being transparent, and I appreciated this. Like, we weren't caught off guard. Now, we were caught off guard the day that it broke, because Andrew Marchand broke it, and he's very good at what he does. And he even texted me later that day. He's like, on a professional level, he's like, this sucks. On a human level, and I'm like, I get it. You do what you got to do. You're doing your job. It's all good. I didn't even need the text, and I've got a pretty good relationship with him. It felt good to get it, but I don't begrudge him at all. You got to do your job. So I really think that when I look back, my instincts in the business have always been pretty good. They've always treated me pretty well. And I know we'll get to the YouTube show, but even there, just firing up a laptop, not knowing about the YouTube world, just launching a new show without a producer yet, without my home studio being rebuilt, with shoddy equipment. I don't mean the microphone, but some of the technology. It's like, I'm super chats and all this other stuff and getting monetized and all the things you got to hit. I'm like, wow. Again, my 10-year-old son was basically producing during Christmas, and then he went back to school, and now I'm a med trying to figure things out. I'm not kidding. Right. So my instincts have always treated me well. Like, when it was time to leave, whether it was leaving Vegas or leaving Detroit or going to 1050, even though I was only promised a weekend show and updates on Afternoon Drive, and I never had any interest in updates, but my instincts told me, hey, you might not get another chance to get on the air in New York. You take it. You kick ass on the weekends. You prove yourself to be valuable and ascending. and then, trust in your talents and things will work out. So my instincts have always been good. And pertaining to what you just asked me, the Carton show coming, or Craig coming back, and BT and Sal dissolving, I knew there were issues. Like, I just knew it because I knew that Craig was coming back. Now, it was never 100%, and I'm not trying to get into his business, but the way it was positioned to me, the company really just didn't know what he could do, what he couldn't do contractually with his former employer. So they were always upfront, and I appreciate this greatly. Like Chris straight up said, he's like, listen, if Craig is free, Craig's a rock star. I'm like, I get it. There's nothing else to say. And now at that point, and really, like, if Craig was free and I was running the station, I would have great interest in bringing him back as well. Now, again, BT and Sal would be something that I would keep because I think it deserved it. But all the other shows are pretty good too. So somebody's going to be left without a chair. So it's a big boy conversation, which I was totally down for and I wanted to have. Like, it's not like me living in an apartment, single me, and, getting little snippets and then getting shocked when something happens. No, this is real life with mortgages and, multiple car payments and putting away money for college fund, 529s, and saving money and 401ks and real life stuff. So Chris was always upfront about that. Now, what I wasn't sure about, you knew the morning show was safe, as they should be. Boomer and Gio, they do great. They generate revenue. They have massive ratings, right? I knew that they shouldn't be touched. I knew that they wouldn't be touched. The only thing that I didn't know, and neither did Chris, and this was communicated to me, was what's going to happen if and when Craig comes back. Well, Craig's not going to come back to the midday show. It's not a high profile enough spot. Now, we treated the midday show like afternoon drive. We viewed ourselves as a PM drive show. All right. That's how we looked at our show, our talents, the revenue that we brought in, which was fairly substantial for a midday show. Right. That was our own processing of what we were. But when you step back and you just apply some logic to it, all right, Craig's going to probably come back. He'll go to afternoon drive. Is he going to go back with Evan? Maybe. They were successful. I thought that would be an option. Would it be like an ensemble? Maybe. That would be an option. He's good with stuff like that. He's very good at utilizing whoever is around him. He's great with that. It's one of his great talents, right? So I'm like, all right, he's in the afternoon, maybe back with Evan. I didn't think it would be Craig and Tiki. I didn't for no real reason. I just didn't think they would go that way.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And then I'm like, okay, how many other slots and machinations are there? Well, would it be maybe Evan goes to middays and is with Sal? Like, I didn't know. Like, I was open-minded to everything. But in my mind, based on where I was from a salary point of view, and I just thought I was expendable, not from a talent point of view. I never thought that. And I still don't believe that, but I was open-minded. And when I looked in the mirror in terms of my processing of everything, I said to myself, as far back as the summer, all right, this is getting a little real. This is getting real. This is going to happen. So I always thought Craig was coming back. And then finally, I got back from Dallas at my in-laws for Thanksgiving. And that Monday, I texted Chris. I'm like, hey, Chris, let me pop in? Let's have a couple. He's like, absolutely, come in after the show. And again, that was where, to me, it was a little bit more, all right, it's obviously happening, and I'm going to have to find out what's next for me. I still wasn't sure about Sal, another talent that I thought deserved to remain. No question. But there's only so many mics. There's only so many slots. You weren't touching the morning show. Craig was going to afternoon drive. There was going to be a numbers crunch, and unfortunately, I was on the wrong end of it. But it was never anything where, wow, what? Like, I didn't once walk out of the studio like, man, I didn't see that coming. There were times where I walked out, and there were other conversations with Chris before that last one, and then ultimately one more, where I'm like, all right, this is not good, and it's time to prepare yourself for a pivot. But I was not blindsided. No, absolutely not.
Was there ever talk about being used in a different role at the station?
Yeah, they asked me. Not for a full time. Like, I was not going to go and do night show. I had no interest in that. No disrespect to anybody that does that show. By the way, Loogie's doing it, and I'm happy for Loogie. Loogie's a talented guy, and he's been hustling for a while. I think he's got great energy, and I think he'll do really well. He's also coming up. He's also younger than me. He's also looking for his first time slot. And by the way, I've done night shows going back to 1050 when I was around his age and maybe even a little bit younger. So I get the dynamic. For me, was not remotely appealing at all. And not that it was even broached about going on the overnight show. Like I would never do that. I just wasn't doing it. And it wasn't even directly broached about that slot, because they weren't really sure what they were going to do. But what was broached, and by the way, it's still there. And hey, listen, when they straight up asked me, would you want to fill in? Like, if we can get you on the air when we can, would you be open to it? Would you be amenable to it? My answer was yeah. I mean, absolutely. Now I've got to do my own thing, and if an opening to fill in on the Fan happens to get in the way of my own thing, well, I'm doing my own thing. I'm not going to jump through hoops to go on for 3 or 4 hours and make a relatively low rate to do it. But it's the Fan, it's a microphone, it's a passion. And if I'm available and I'm free, 100%, I absolutely plan on jumping back on the Fan at some point. Yeah, no question.
And I'm not saying that this was even on the table. I'm just curious, do you think that you would have been able to work with Craig? Is that a show that you think you could have built?
I absolutely think I could have worked with Craig. Now, that was never in the cards. I remember even asking Chris that. I remember saying as he was going through, and I don't even think I heard C-Mac's name, and good for Chris as well. Great guy, texted him, wished him well before his first show. There's just a lot of good people at that station that have been busting ass for a while. That as I'm left without a seat, I can say that I'm genuinely happy for those who found one. I really mean that. And if I didn't mean it, I wouldn't say it. Like, I'm not that guy who's just going to say it to, oh, wow, what a nice dude. Look what he's saying. No, it's a grind, man.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of change in that station. And there's been a lot of people who, whose names aren't on shows, who are busting hump, working crazy hours, working holidays, not a ton of money to do it, no real recognition. And I will always support those guys, and I'll always root for them, right? But I remember saying to Chris at one point, I did say that. I'm like, why not me and Craig? Like, I just threw it out there. And I don't know if Sal asked the same thing, but basically it was like, you guys are too similar. Like, you've got to have a bit of a differentiation. Now, Sal and I are also very similar in our on-air presentation. A little bit different away from the mic, away from the field, if you will, different personalities with certain things. But on the air, we're both full bore, aggressive, no holds barred, no apologies. And again, it took us a little while to find our footing. When we did, we made it work. But I think I could work with anybody. I really do. I think I've got great adaptability. The only person in terms of a type, not even a name, the only type of person that I have no interest working with, number one, is somebody who doesn't love radio. Like, you got to love radio. You got to love the grind. You got to love the transformation of a thought into a compelling segment. And there's an art to it. Not everybody has it. So if you love the game and, you're a little nutty and you're a little loud and you're a little unpredictable and you love the radio, absolutely. Like, I do think that I could have done very well with Craig, because I think Craig is talented. And I've got a good relationship with Craig. Now, he's also said some really nice things about us that I appreciate. I mean, doesn't pay the mortgage, doesn't change the situation, but I don't believe he was just saying it to say it. When he said that he thought we were the best midday show ever at the Fan, coming from a guy, all right, Craig might not be on the Mount Rushmore only because there's 4 spots. You're talking about an Imus, you're talking about a Mike and Chris, you're talking about a Boomer who's in the mix, and Craig is certain. Now, if you want to do Boomer and Carton, sure, you could do that. You got to talk about the Schmooze, you talk about Joe, you talk about Mark Chernoff, you talk about Chris Olivero, and maybe 1 or 2 others behind the scenes, early stages. No, I mean, I'm certainly not that. I was only on the air 3 years there, but I think that when I look at him as a talent, I'm impressed by what he's done. How could you not? He's a winner. He's a ratings winner. He's a revenue winner, and he's a person that people respond to, and I think I am as well. Now, so that would have been appealing, and it would have been a feeling out process. It never even came remotely as a possible option. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if it was broached, I would have been, let's go. I absolutely would have made it happen. Yeah. But he did say some nice things, and I remember there was. I'll tell you this, and this is how I know it wasn't just him trying to say it. Where when I was still with Tiki at this point. When I moved from National to the Fan, so down the hall, literally same floor, same building, obviously. I remember he reached out and he invited me to his house for the Super Bowl. And he's like, hey, Boone's going to be there. I think Chris Christie was going to be there. It's his boy, Christie. And he's like, why don't you bring the family? And I thought it was a really nice gesture, because there's certain people at the station that you look at kind of as the captain. I looked at Boomer that way as the captain. And Craig, certainly a different type of personality than Boomer, but as the captain, somebody who just understood it, who was in the trenches, incredibly successful, synonymous with FAN. He didn't have to do that. I mean, he could have just reached out with a text and say, "Hey, good luck. Go get him. I know you've been waiting for this," which would have been appreciated as well. But to invite me, now his son wound up getting COVID. We had to cancel. That's not the point. Like I appreciated that, and it was sincere and it was genuine. So when he has said what he has said, I haven't actually. I'm not in the business of searching for clips about myself. A lot of people have told me what he said and even sent me screenshots, and I definitely did appreciate it, and I do appreciate it. There's no question about that. It's a nice gesture.
How did your relationship with Sal develop over the couple of years you guys worked together?
Oh man, it was really night and day. I remember, they got to understand, Sal's coming from grinding in the overnights and busting his ass and doing TV and juggling 2 jobs, right? And when it's hard to explain, like when you get even when I first got on the air with Tiki at FAN, like you feel like you have to prove yourself. You just do. Now, the thing about me is, and him as well, I always feel that way. I don't care how much money I'm making. I don't care what my situation is in terms of being there for a while. That's my mindset. I had to fight and I had to scrape my way into this business, and it was not easy. I didn't go to Syracuse or one of these great broadcasting schools. My dad wasn't connected at all. I mean, I had to really scrap to get to where I've gotten. So in my mind, anytime this thing is in front of me, like I'm fighting to protect it. I'm fighting to prove myself, to show my value, to show my worth, to demonstrate why the people who gave me that mic and the power of the mic, and it's a powerful tool, I'm going to reward them for that faith, right? And Sal's cut from the same cloth. So the only difference was that I had already, had some other prominent slots, and I'm a couple of years older as well. So I had a little more experience there, and I get it. Like, he was trying to prove himself. I was still trying to prove myself. We were trying to prove ourselves as a team, and there's a lot of things at play there. And I remember texting him when the announcement came, and I said, listen, we've got to learn to trust each other. Once we learn, because I know our styles, once we learn to do that, this show is going to be amazing. It's going to be like no other show on the fan. It's going to stand out. But why trust is so important to me is, especially with a strong personality like Sal, like when he's coming at me, and conversely when I'm coming at him, there's got to be an understanding. It's not personal. Yeah. I'm not trying to make you look bad, and I've got to know that you're not trying to make me look bad. Like, I'm not going to make you look bad or try to in an attempt to elevate myself, because it might help with me, but it's going to hurt the show. And that's the ultimate judgment. And even if it wasn't a willful thing on my end or his end, it's a natural thing, because you're in the boxing ring, you're in the octagon, you're scrapping for respect, you're scrapping for ratings, you're scrapping for contracts, you're fighting. And it's just a verbal fight rather than a physical fight. It's a verbal jousting, right? And it took us a while to get there. Once we got there, and once we crossed that bridge, then we became friends. And then you could tell within the show. I remember having him over to my house very early in our relationship on the air. Barbecue. Hey, bring your daughter. I want to meet your wife. And to me, that's part of like team building, right? And then obviously, he reciprocated. We went to his house over the summer. Beautiful barbecue. Hoff was there, our producer as well. And then our wives would talk a little bit. And, my kids were around his daughter, who's 4, and they're a little bit older. So there was that dynamic, which was great. And then, when you're sitting around having a couple of drinks and just bullshitting and you're just being real, and, now it's like, okay, let's have some fun here. And once we had that, and once I learned, okay, his cadence and what he's passionate about, and all right, it's his time to eat. He's rolling. The younger me, right? And this comes from a lack of confidence in terms of not being able to be good on the air, but a lack of accomplishment. When I was younger, I would always want to jump in. I would always be ready to just like, no, whomever I'm with, they're talking too much. I got to go. I got to carve out my piece of real estate. Otherwise, I'm not standing out here. And part of becoming great, and I'm not saying that I'm great by any means, but the quest to be great is to learn how to listen and to learn how to lay out. And that's an art. And it was not an easy one because I'm a natural talker. I like to go. I could just go for an hour. I mean, as you can tell here, I could talk a lot. Everybody who knows my style they're familiar with it because my style on air is very much the same. I mean, obviously a heightened presentation on the air, but it's kind of who I am off the air. I'm always talking. I like to communicate. So once we got there, man, I thought the show was awesome. And I'll tell you this too. I look back at some of the things that we did. It's hard to generate news in the middays.
Yep.
For the New York Post and your outlet, Awful Announcing, and others, whether it's Barrett Media, they picked up a lot of stuff, what we were doing. Now, some of it was one of us losing our minds or having a situation with Carl Banks or whatever it might be. But pretty quickly in our relationship, Aaron Boone got in his car from his home, drove into the studio, and just sat with us for an hour and flipped baseball cards and shot the breeze. And, there's a reason. I think there's a reason why he did that. He respected the show, and he's not just doing that out of the kindness. He didn't even know us.
Yeah.
Out of the kindness. That's not normal. I mean, how many WFAN midday shows get that? I don't really know of any, and it's not to cast aspersions. It's just to tell you what we had. So we had some gravitas there, and I think that mattered. I think that came out to the audience. There was a level of trust and equity that was built, not right away, but when you had the friendship and the understanding, coupled with the tenacity and the unpredictability, I think there was a juice that was really, really good, and really, I think, separated us from a lot of shows.
Yeah, I had wrote that a couple of times. I think just the fact that you guys had good ratings, but the way to really measure that the show was successful was the fact that you guys had clips that went viral, and you regularly made headlines, which is definitely rare for a midday show. I know you had talked about Spike Eskin a bit on your YouTube show, and just his the philosophy of grabbing the audience in the first 10-15 seconds or so with the strong take. Did having to kind of abide by that philosophy, did that make it harder to develop chemistry with Sal early on?
I think it was an obstacle. I do. And by the way, I texted Spike after that. You know how this goes. I got love for Spike, man. He put me on WFAN.
Yep.
And I think he knows the ins and outs of the business. I think he's brilliant. And I'm not just saying that. But that was definitely a bit of a struggle, and probably more for me than for Sal. There's something about conceptually, Spike's 100% right. If you get on the air and you got 3 minutes of nonsense and fluff, hey, here's the phone number, hey, long drive in from the traffic, my wife was by, my kid's sick, this, that, whatever. All right, there's an expiration point on how long you can mess around without getting into the topic. Now, and what I said on my YouTube show was, there was a point where you could do that. And I'm not even saying that Mike and Chris did that regularly, because Chris would open the show and good afternoon, everyone. How are you? So you had that bang. It just came flying out of the speakers right away. He wasn't dilly-dallying to get to, there was a juice right away. It was palpable, right? But they can at least digress a little bit before they get into whatever they're getting into. And I do like having a bit more of a balance. That was more of my wheelhouse, right? Let's be human beings. Now, it's not Spike's fault that I struggle with that. That was his mandate, and that's his managerial style, if you will. And, I'm a player. I'm not the coach. I'm not the GM. So if your boss is telling you, hey, here's what I expect, well, then that's what you got to do. The problem for me was it would almost, and for us, it created an energy before we even went on the air. Like there were days where it was easy and we just knew right away, bang, bang, boom, let's go, right? But there were days where we would dig in so deep and I would get frustrated and I'm like, oh, God, it's 9. The show starts at 10. It's 9:42. It's 9:45. All right, where are we going with it? We're not there yet, guys. And I wasn't the only one saying it, but I would grow outwardly frustrated with it because I knew we had a show to do and I didn't feel like we were getting there yet. And I'm, in my mind, sometimes it's okay to agree. When you've got two powerful voices like you had on that show, I think it's sometimes equally powerful to agree.
Yeah.
I don't think there's got to be immediate, not so much discord, but disagreement, right? I don't think you need that line, that immediate line of delineation. I'm here, he's there, bang, let's put the gloves on and let's start hammering. Now, there's days after a bad loss, it's going to happen naturally. And as we got, when Spike left, and then Ryan Hurley, who's got a little bit of a different philosophy, I think we found, not that Ryan doesn't want you to get into the topic right away, some core principles for sure, but it was less, it wasn't hammered home every day. So we could start the show, I don't want to say with less tension, but a little more free. And I just think that when you're free, you're going to do your best work. I don't care if you're an athlete, if you're tight and you're tense. Like, I'll give you people, you grab a baseball, right? And you want to throw it as hard. Somebody's got a radar gun on you. You're getting scouted, right? The tighter that you grab that ball, the less velocity you're going to have. It's just not going to come out. Literally, physics will prove that. It's going to come out slower because there's what I don't need to get into the physical aspects of it, but just trust me, that's what's going to happen. Whereas if you grip it a little bit looser, you're going to get more RPMs, and then you're going to get more velocity. It's the same concept in terms of how you present the show. And inwardly, I felt, I'll only speak for myself here, I felt early like I was gripping too hard, and I hadn't felt like that way in a while. And it was, I wouldn't say it was a problem, but it definitely kept us from hitting top speed as early as I thought we might. And then once we made the modification, and then the meetings became a little more just kind of shooting the breeze and like less fixated on, okay, what's the dynamic here? I remember, so we were together for not very long at this point. Knicks and Sixers a couple of years ago, first round playoffs, right? I remember and we were both frustrated. And I remember saying, man, during a break, I'm like, is this how it's supposed to be? Like, the Knicks won a playoff game last night, and we're screaming at each other. Like, what are we doing? Like, it didn't feel right to me, And I expressed that to him, and I think that, and he certainly received it the right way. I don't know that it fixed everything right away.
Yeah.
I think we both had to make concessions. It's equally about me and him. It's not. I'm not saying it's him. It's both of us. You had to figure it out. And then I just look back on last year's playoff run. That's the way, in my mind, it's supposed to be. Hey, Knicks play awful. Get on the air. Light them up. Knicks flushed down a 10-point lead with 3:12 to go. Going to crush them. Knicks win a good game. There's no problems. There's nothing to really – you don't have to go 9 levels deep to think that hard about presenting it in a compelling way. The compelling way is, hey, the Knicks might win a championship, and they look pretty damn good last night. And we're getting deeper and deeper into this playoff run. So those were things that we both learned. Again, and I made sure to reach out to Spike, and he was like, dude, I get it. He's like, I know, we know the business. I mean, if you go back and watch the segment on my YouTube show, it's obviously up there, living, obviously. It was not a takedown. It was a little teeny thing that was extrapolated from a much lengthier overview, laced with respect and admiration for Spike as somebody who knows the business. So that's really where it was. But no, I mean, I don't think it's that different from a new coach coming in and, a quarterback who with a new playbook who's got a different playbook. You're not going to be humming in week one. You're just not. It's pretty unrealistic. But we got there.
Speaking of having takes, you mentioned working with Stephen A. Smith earlier. What was that experience like? What was it like working with Stephen A. 20 years ago or so, where, I mean, obviously he was a big name then, but like he wasn't the future presidential candidate that he is now.
It wouldn't surprise me, man. He is. I see him on Hannity. I see him on The View. He is legitimately into it. It was awesome. I absolutely love the guy. I got a funny story. I haven't even told this story. And I was talking about Steve on the podcast the other day, but I didn't get into this. So I'm there maybe a year or two. I don't know this guy. He's writing for Philadelphia newspaper. I don't really know Stephen A.
Yeah.
And he's not on TV that much. I don't know about his delivery, this bombastic, over-the-top style. I don't know anything about him, right? Because he's not a star yet. And I remember when management told me they were bringing him in, and I thought that spot should have been mine. I thought it should have been just me or with another partner, but it was clearly positioned. It's Stephen A's show. You're doing the updates, and you keep doing your weekend shows, right? All right. And because it was a station that was trying to find its footing, I remember the Mets opening day. I'm doing my part of the show, the updates, and chiming in whenever he wants me. I'm not even in the same studio with Stephen A. the first day. I'm on the LIRR platform with this, grassroots setup for 1050. I mean, it was a circus, man. God. And he asked me something, and I gave him a good answer. It was about baseball, and I know I was right. Not that I was trying to showcase it, but I know I was right. And he gets into this, nothing bad, but he launches into this Stephen A. way, like, I don't know about that, man. Again, I'm saying to myself, what the hell? What is this guy talking about? Like, is it going to really be this way? And I push back, right? But I push back in a way where I wasn't overstepping my bounds. It was the Stephen A. Smith show. It wasn't even with BT or with Brandon Tierney. It was Stephen A. Smith, right? I'm doing updates, and if he needs me, pulls me in. So the first call, God, it was like serendipitous. The first call, I don't even know who it was or where that person was calling from. Yo, Stephen A., welcome to the station, man. Great to have you, buddy. You sound great. Let me just tell you something. Take it easy on BT. Knows the stuff, and he's got fans. Like we like him. Don't take him out. Show him some respect, basically. And from that point on, I remember very quickly he started calling me his right-hand man. He'd always say, so when he'd start the show, and I could still hear the cadence, and my right-hand man, Brandon Tierney. Like, that's how we would say my Tierney, right? And from there, once he knew that I wasn't trying to make him look bad, I guess it goes back to the trust factor and the trust aspect of a new broadcast dynamic. He would lean on me with stuff. And there were early times, I remember he was interviewing Braden Looper for the Mets when he was their closer. And I think he called him Brian Looper or Brandon Looper. He didn't really know his baseball back then. He'll even admit that. He didn't really know it now the way, because he's basketball and stuff. But now at least he's functional. Then he was lost, right? No disrespect, Steve. Come on, you know I'm right. And he's calling him the wrong name every single time. And finally, I write down on a piece of paper, I'm like, yo, it's like B-R-A, and I even like B-R-A-Y hyphen, so he couldn't mispronounce it. I slipped it to him, right? And then he made amends. And then we just started. Here's where I knew. Number one, he was a star. But most importantly, he was a good guy. And he is a good guy. Because if you don't know Steve, especially early, and you hear this crazy voice, cutting callers off and just talking down to people, this overly theatrical presentation, like, man, who the hell does this guy think he is? And I get it, right? But I knew him differently, because this was before people talked a lot about race on radio, way before COVID, way before politics, influenced conversations and how you direct certain things. And we didn't really do a lot of politics that back, but we did a lot of race things, right? And a lot of it was first off the air. And I knew right away, I'm like, this is a well-intentioned, this is a very smart, this is a good-hearted person. And then I remember it took another level favorably when we were doing a show out of Jets camp, and I guess Herm was coaching, and his sisters came by. And he's like, my sisters love you, man. My sisters, not that I was ever gonna go on a date with his sisters, but they're like, they think you're adorable. They like some of that BT style. I'm like, all right. And then I got to know his sisters, right? And then when his mom passed away, we weren't working together. But I remember reaching out, sending flowers, and like I just got to see how grounded he was in virtues that I subscribe to: family, faith, and being fair. And I think there were a lot of people early on with Stephen A. I'll just say, like, a lot of white people who were like, man, he's not coming across as fair. I think if you listen to Stephen A., this is years ago when I think people first thought that. Now that's changed. You listen to him, he's not about black or white or left or right or being a centrist, or he is about being right for what's good for humanity. That's really his mission. Now, he's got certain proclivities where he's going left, going right. He describes himself as a centrist. That's why I use that word. He has said that about himself. And to me, that's the kind of person, if he ever does run for office, but more importantly, that's the kind of person that I wanted to work with and that I still to this day want to be friends with, because there's no agenda. The only agenda is what's right for well-intentioned people. I love the guy. He is an absolute superstar of a talent. There is no one near him. I mean, McAfee's amazing, but Stephen A. is one of one. He is this generation's Howard Cosell. I think in a lot of ways, he's flown past certain things that even Howard did, because there's so many different outlets and so many different ways to cut through. And the man brings it every day. He's wrong a lot. He'll mess up some little baseball things. We're all wrong a lot. But the delivery, A+. The human, A+. Love him.
It's interesting because like you're obviously known as a New York sports guy. I'm sure that was probably something that you had to almost battle when you were going around the country, when you were in Detroit and San Francisco and some of your other stops.
Yep.
And I know Stephen A grew up in New York, but by the time he was doing radio in New York, like he was already known as a national NBA guy, and he was known for covering Allen Iverson.
Yes.
I don't know if at that point, like there were many people were going to Stephen A to hear him talk about the Yankees or Jets. And like, you need that in New York sports radio. So as big of a personality as he is, as entertaining as he is, it almost felt like he never really quite resonated as a New York sports radio personality because of that.
Well, he did with the Knicks. Absolutely. There's no doubt he did with the Knicks. I think football, which I think he's pretty good at, I think there was more trust or more desire to listen to him after a bad game, or, hey, we got to fire this guy, and got to talk about this coach or this draft pick. Baseball's a different monster. Like, you're not fooling baseball fans. You know, you got to know baseball. And the way you know baseball on the deepest micro and way beyond macro level is you can't really play catch up. You know, what's the line in was it Brosco? Where was it? No. Where Pacino goes, where he says something along the lines of, you know, there's no fake in the streets. Like, you want to be a tough guy? To Sean Penn's character, right? Why am I forgetting the name? Not Brosco. Whatever the movie is, right? Where he says, you can't. Oh, you a tough guy now, huh? You can't fake being tough. You know, you think you're a street guy now. You ain't a street guy. You gonna and he's right. Like, if you don't grow up on the streets, I don't care how you position yourself, you're not a street guy. And if you don't grow up, no matter what you do, you'll never be a street guy. And if you don't grow up a diehard, nuts and bolts, daily, day to day, and for my generation, read the papers and watching Channel 9, watching Channel 11, watching Connor's Corner, listening to Scooter Rizzuto. I mean, just collecting baseball cards, you know, emulating every Yankee and Met in the street, playing wiffle ball, literally. No, but I was always the Yankees. It would be Ricky. It will be Willie. It will be Donnie. It will be Winfield. It will be Jack Clark. It will be Mike Pagliarulo. And literally, I had all their stances. Like, if you're not doing that and you're my age, not that you can't know baseball, but I don't know that you'll have that highest level of trust within your audience. So I don't think that's something that he ever got. And I don't like, if Steven said, I'm done with TV right now, and I just want to be on the Fan or on 880 ESPN, he still wouldn't have that baseball trust.
Yeah.
But he's such a transcendent talent that he's one of the few people in our industry that can kind of work around that. Because I think what he's learned, he didn't know this early on. He did not. He had to learn what he didn't know. Like, it's one thing to know what you know, and you've got to ride that wave, and that's got to be, you know, your inner strength and, you know, something that you can reach for at any given time. I think it's almost as important to really be aware of your shortcomings and what you don't know. And you're not going to fool people, you know, and forget about Steve, just anybody, with a loud theatrical presentation. Like, do you know what you're talking about, or do you not? And baseball's different. Like, you can kind of you could jump in the NBA and, you know Giannis, and, you know, if you're not a Knicks guy, know what's going on out west with Wemby and, you know, the Spurs, the Warriors back in the day, or the Lakers, you know, and parachute around. Baseball, it is so territorial, it is so regional, that if you don't know what you're talking and you're on the air locally and it's a baseball city, you're dead. You're going to get sniffed out in a week. You're dead. Or if not a day.
I had interviewed you when I was writing for Barrett Media years back. I think this was right before you did Man vs. Bear for Discovery. Yeah. And so at that point, you're at CBS Sports Radio. I had asked you about just like your desires, whether or not you wanted to get to WFAN. And you'd given an answer. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it was something along the lines of that you liked what national radio had to offer, just in terms of all the different topics and what you could talk about, versus having to, you know, make sure you're breaking down Mets and Yankees bullpen moves every day over the summer. So now that you worked at FAN for 3-4 years, what did you like better, the national or the local?
Well, the thing about local that the national doesn't have is that juice, like that intensity. And I love that. And you can't replicate that. You can't fake it. Now I had that on my YouTube show because I'm delivering the energy and I'm me. But it's a good question, and I'm not trying to be evasive. I like both parts. Like, again, if I was at this stage of my career, early 50s, been on the air pretty much without interruption since 1999. Outside of right now, and I'm doing something, so I don't even count this. There was 1 month where I was not off the air, when I was not on the air, pardon me. And that was in between 10:50 and going to do Afternoon Drive in San Francisco. And the only reason why there was a month is because the station in San Francisco wasn't launching until August 1st. All right. Yeah. So I had to move out there, whatever. So I've seen both, right? But, and this is why I got emotional when I was wrapping things up on the fan. It would have been incomplete. It would have felt incomplete. Like, I can have all these things on my resume and made a few bucks and won a few awards and done some amazing things and Super Bowls and Final Fours and talked to Heisman Trophy winners and MVPs and all the things that the national outlet afforded me. Like when the Jets drafted Darnold, we had Rosen, we had Joshua, we had every one of those quarterbacks on the phone, some in studio. Like we had Saquon at Penn State. He called me and Tiki from a stairwell in one of the buildings when he was getting ready to go to class, because we had booked it. You just don't really get that kind of stuff on the fan where it's less interview heavy or intensive. Yep. And I love interviewing people. I love talking to people, right? So that part of national, great. I also doing national, you can kind of delve into, I love golf. That's not the same without Tiger and Phil. That's kind of, live, whatever. It's kind of petered out a little bit, but there was a point where you could do, pick your spots, some really good, meaningful golf content, which I love. I'm not good, but I love playing and I love talking about it. I love watching it, right? So those are things that the national template allowed me to do. But the day-to-day trenches of the fan, even locally in San Francisco and in Detroit, is incredibly appealing. There's just there's an emotional investment that you can't fake. Like today, Knicks fans are pissed. There's no doubt. And they should be, because the Knicks offense is awful. They got punked by 31. I know we're taping this, but they got punked by 31. The Pistons were ready to play. That's one of their rivals. Knicks weren't. They've lost 4 straight. Cat's asleep. Brunson's chucking up shots. The Knicks don't look good right now. So if I'm on the fan today, now obviously you'd have to work with the Giants head coaching spots, Stefanski. Those would be the 2 big topics. But the Knicks fan, once we got into the Knicks content, it would be real. Now, if I'm doing Knicks on national, there's going to be people who are checking in, but with less vested interest, oh yeah, the Knicks were supposed to be a little bit better than this. What's going on? Did they hire the wrong guy? Like, you could get into different elements of the conversation, but the volume would be lower and the passion. It would just be a very different conversation. So I love both. And by the way, I think doing the national, it just made me better. It just made me more well-versed. And I've always been an all-encompassing sports fan, but to do that for 10 years and Heisman Trophy, college football playoff races before there was a playoff, all those things, I think, tightened up my game, made me a more well-rounded broadcaster. And this is the way it was meant to be. But the juice of the fan, the juice of the local, that's unmatched. That's different.
The landscape of radio and media has changed dramatically over the last 10 years or so. Is that juice and energy, do you still feel that when you're on the radio?
On the radio or on the YouTube show?
On the radio.
Yes, there's no question about it. Like, there was never a point where I was doing the show with the fan where I'm like, we're not very relevant, or no. I mean, it's WFAN.
Yeah.
I mean, the moment we get on, phone lines lit up, great numbers on YouTube. Like, Sal and I got a lot. Our numbers on the YouTube page for W, and you can look at this up, were phenomenal. I mean, we generated a lot of numbers there. Again, for not just for a midday show, I mean, for the station. Very proud of that. So we were delivering something in a compelling way. No, but I also understood that whether it was the way my contract negotiations were going, each year, unfortunately, terrestrial radio becomes just a tick less relevant and a tick less profitable. It just does. There's other people coming in, slicing up the pie. I get it. And but I didn't like, when I was on the air, I didn't feel that. I was able to compartmentalize the ever-evolving landscape of conventional radio and not have an impact. Like, it always felt big. It always felt, it always had juice. It always had incredible relevance. So, one of the things that has changed, I mean, you go back for years, even 1050 would do this, like as the home of the Jets back then, they would have Rex on, right? Or Herm was on. And those guys would get a lot of money to come on once a week. Eli would come on with Mike Francesa. Those guys were getting about $100,000 a year just to come on and once a week talk for 10, 12 minutes. And in some cases, maybe more Eli than Rex. Not say a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
So, but the reason you could justify that is because you get a massive sponsorship attached to it, which defrays the cost. Obviously, it's a highly relevant spot, and it's justifiable economically. Nobody really does that anymore because there's no real need for it because, coaches can say whatever they want on the press like that. It's just different. Like they could pop on, not that I would advise a coach popping on social media too often, but clips are now taken. They live everywhere. So it's just a different game. And as long as you're smart enough to understand the changing dynamics of radio, and I certainly rolled with the punches as it evolved and as it changed, then I think you enjoy it. And I think you could still make a really good living doing it, which I was doing. And, had a lot of endorsements. I was doing stuff with Cadillac. I was doing stuff with FanDuel. I mean, Cadillac was the title sponsor for the BT and Sal show. I mean, that was a big undertaking so if relevance was gone or the economic model was busted, trust me, they're not signing on for what they signed on to be the title sponsor for BT and Sal. So that's a long twisting road through the change of radio. Of course it's changed, but even when WFAN was born in 87, it was different in 2000 than it was in 87. That's just the way life goes. Everything's different.
Can doing the YouTube show be as fulfilling for you as being on radio?
I've got some things that I've got to do to get there, to have like that ultimate fulfillment. And I've got to integrate calls, which I will do. I've got to first find a producer. I've got to do that. There's checkpoints here. I'm going to have a complete redesign of the studio. Like what you see behind, I could actually pop this up really quick. What you see behind me is not what you're going to see behind me once I get to the point of getting where I'm going to get. And it's going to look something like that.
Okay.
So we're building that out. That's going to be from the top of the wall behind me to the, right to the bottom of the floor. It's going to be pulled down like it's going to have a real mechanism there. So I think once I get that, it's going to feel a little bit more like a studio. That's number one. The ability to obviously have guests, which ties into having a producer, because I can't say, oh, hold on, let me see if my guy is there. There's things that I've got to get to,
sure,
and I'm going to get to. And then the ability to integrate the calls. I've already bought the phone number. Like I've already got the number for the show. So to me, will it be as fulfilling? Yeah. And it's my mission to make it more fulfilling. It's my mission to make it more profitable. It's my mission to do everything at my speed, when I want to do it and how I want to do it, and the concepts of the show and the sponsorship, the ultimate sponsorships of the show, which is something we're already pretty deeply in with a few big companies. Like that's going to come. It's just a matter of when. Like we've got to go through some certain things, which we're doing. So once I have the sponsorship and I'm taking calls and I'm doing interviews and the studio looks a little bit different, I'm going to feel incredibly fulfilled because I already feel fulfilled now. It's a different level of fulfillment. What I feel now is I made the right choice. Not leaving the fan. That wasn't my choice. Although I guess I could have tried to, piece it together, which I've never been a piece it together kind of guy. That's just not my style. So, but there is an energy now, and there's, it's an interesting combination of emotions. There's a little trepidation. There's some fear, but there's incredible energy and passion and belief and optimism for what I can grow this into. And it will allow me to get some more national stuff on there. It will allow me to do some things that maybe, you just wouldn't do on the fan, given the local jurisdiction, if you will. So it's totally different. I've got a 13-second commute from upstairs down to my home office. I'm home a lot more. It's a little different in that regard. But when I tell you, like my wife actually signed me up for the YouTube channel. I didn't even know how to do it, right? So when I saw the immediate surge of support, I mean, 13,000 subscribers is not going to pay my mortgage, right? I understand that. But I just launched December 23rd, whatever it was. And to basically have 150,000 viewing hours already, to have every video getting 8, 9, 10, some more, 15, 18, 20,000 views. When I'm just figuring this thing out, when the thumbnails are, the resolution in the thumbnails not even good, when the shorts that we're putting out are not even fully professional, when the marketing around the show and the advertising and the sponsorship and all those things, there's not a bell and whistle yet on the show. And I really had to make the determination, and it was an easy one for me. And people have asked me this a lot, like, wow, you're just jumping right into it, huh? I said, yeah, I'm jumping into it. I got a lot to say. So to me, it's where you do it and who's paying you and what. Yeah, it's nice every 2 weeks, that guaranteed corporate pretty good check coming in, and that's pretty much gone after a while. But everything else remains the same. It's the content. So for me, while I wrestled with it for a minute, there was the thought, all right, do I just go and open up the laptop and see if this thing is going to work, and everything's going to kind of look really kind of antiquated or fairly benign? And that's not how I know I don't want it to look that way right away. Or do I wait until everything's perfect and then roll it out? And to me, it was a no-brainer. Just get going. Start, let people know what you're doing, crank it out, get the views going, get the subs going. I love the live chat. Funny, my son's like, Dad, you got to get this, you got to get the super chats up. I'm like, I honestly don't know what that is. And you're making me nervous, because now you hit me with stuff that I don't know anything about. So what the hell is a super chat? So I obviously know what it is now. And it's crazy how, people paying you money to read a message. And I don't want them to feel compelled to do that. The real money's going to come with the sponsorship. And then ultimately, if I want to do this, aligning myself with an incredibly viable and profitable company that views what I'm in the earliest stages of doing as economically viable for them. And I would have to feel the same way, and ultimately a great fit. Like, the ultimate goal is to be able to sell this while still controlling my content and how it's distributed. And come on, it's not going to. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing a show on MySpace. That's how antiquated it feels. I'm like, today the audio wasn't great. I'm like, geez, my wife is out there. She's like, it doesn't say. People are hitting me on messages. Dude, why do you have a lisp? But dude, did you have dental surgery? No, I'm just trying to do a show in a studio that's in an office that's not soundproofed, with, a microphone that is a really good one, but that I hope is hooked up properly. So I don't know what to tell you, man. So I'm going to grind through it. And I'm going to continue to lay that foundation. And I really believe this with all my heart. I believe that even more so than the satisfaction of getting to WFAN, which was always the number one professional priority for me from day one. As I build this out and I look back at the early videos, oh my God, look at that first show you did from your basement, dude, when the Wi-Fi was really bad. I mean, look at that. Wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Remember when you were doing the show with the Mattingly jersey? Oh, remember when your wife was outside the studio telling you, trying to figure out what's going on? The audio's not great. Trying to upload things without a producer. Like, I'm going to take great, not only professional pride, but great pride as a human, as a worker, as somebody who is a fighter in this business. When I look back in 6 months and then a year and then beyond, the earliest rollout of what I'm in the early stages of doing, I'm going to be very proud of that, because it's not easy. And if nothing else, I hope it's, not to get corny, but I hope it serves as some certainly motivation for my kids. I always tell them, control what you can control. Hey, I would have stayed at WFAN. WFAN didn't want me anymore. Couldn't control that. There was a circumstance. A star was free. They did what they did. I don't begrudge them. Okay, you got to move on. Get up. Get knocked down. Get up. Just get up. So right now, this is the stage of getting up and getting off the mat, getting out of the corner, finding out what my opponent is, and punching back. And it's exciting, and it's nerve-wracking, and it's exhausting, but it's the right move. I have no doubt about that. For me, it's absolutely it's the right time, and it's the right move.
And it's got to feel pretty good to have, like you said, 13,000 subscribers in just a couple of weeks, because as much as you knew that the show with Sal was successful, and you knew that you're a personality that resonates with the New York sports audience, like, there's got to be that question of, like, how much is it me specifically versus how much is it WFAN? And the fact that you already have all these subscribers coming out and you have this interest in the show this quickly, it shows that there is the interest in you personally.
Yeah, that is very rewarding for sure. I mean, listen, go back to what we talked about before about how the business is changing and all that stuff. I always knew, and I've always leaned on my instincts in this business, and most times it's really pushed me in the right direction, either to not sign a contract in the early days, not sign a contract because I'm worth more than that. or, whatever decision I had to make, it's always kind of been, it's like my quarterback clock. When someone's coming on the edge, when you got to flush or just get rid of the ball and throw it away. It's been good to me in that regard so far, right? And I knew even before I thought that Craig was like, I didn't know what was going on with Fox. He was doing his thing and we were doing a good show. And, I wasn't really thinking about that. It wasn't centrally on my mind. But I'll tell you, I always knew in the deepest recesses of my professional mind, I always knew that I was going to have some storybook 20-year, just based on when I started and the evolving nature of the business, some 20-year run on WFAN like Joe or Schmooze. Like that wasn't in the cards. And quite frankly, I never really aspired to that anyway. So not that I wanted, listen, I didn't want it to end when it ended. It did. And you adjust and you move forward and you do what you got to do. But I would have happily been at WFAN for a couple of more years. I admit that. But I always knew there was a next chapter. I always knew there was a next phase for me. I didn't know what. It was always very nebulous. Like, all right, what about a YouTube show? What about a streaming show? What about motivational speaking, which is something I started to do more and more of? What about finishing my book, which I started during COVID, and I've got about 6 chapters written. Now you can dive in. It's on youth sports. I can finally really dive into that and get into it. That's a real passion of mine, up to my neck in it with my kids, and I played, so it's a natural gravitation for me. Those are all things I always had my eye on and things that I knew that I would attack at some point. I just didn't know when, and quite frankly, to be fully transparent, I don't think, and I've got a lot of guts in this business. I've made a lot of tough decisions, like getting in my car and driving from Brooklyn to Las Vegas for $23,000 a year to do a show on the weekends for a national network that I hadn't heard of on the East Coast, All right, hey, there's a microphone. Oh, you want to pay me? Oh, it's on throughout the country. Oh, Pharrell's there. Oh, the Sports Babe is there. Oh, Jim Rome is there. I'm there. And I drove. I literally drove, and I stopped in Nashville, Tennessee. I stopped in Amarillo, Texas. I stopped in Flagstaff, Arizona. And I'll never forget, I finally cruised into Vegas, and the station was off the strip, and I'm like, I'm here. And I just met my new bosses, and I just started scrapping, and I just started climbing. So I've always had a willingness to roll my sleeves up and get after it, but I don't, and I've always had a real belief in my abilities. I've always thought that I could do this, right? And do it at a very high level. But even with all those things being said, I admit with 2 kids and a wife and a mortgage and the things that I've got to worry about financially, I would not have had the guts to willingly leave WFAN and just start this on my own. I wouldn't have. Not now. Not when things were going the way they were going well. So sometimes, the best things in life are almost forced upon you where you've got to reevaluate. And if you're timid in that evaluation, well, you're going to drag your feet and probably not try something that could be even better than anything that you've ever done before. And in my opinion, and in my goal and my every waking thought is consumed with making what I'm doing now on YouTube and eventually other platforms the best thing I've ever done in my career by far.
And I think one of the things that helps is, you mentioned how the show did really with Sal did really well on YouTube. Like there were a lot of people that they watched you at 10 o'clock every morning on YouTube, and now they're still doing the same. So like it's a different YouTube channel, but the clicking the YouTube channel and just kind of having it up on their computer or on their phone throughout the morning hours, that is still, it's habitual for a lot of people, and it makes it easy for them to find you.
Well, the reason why, yes, I would agree with that. And the reason why I think that Sam and I played well on YouTube and why it's off to a good early start for me is because I am a very visual, I'm a very, I won't say theatrical, but a very physical deliverer of my words. I can't help it. Like, I don't know any other way. Even when I'm doing the St. John's games, like I can't just sit there and, be like, oh, well, wow, a nice bucket by Zuby. All right, make St. John's within 10. Like I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, and it's not like me being fake. It's me. It's like really my enthusiasm coming through. Like, so instead of that delivery, it might be something like, oh, Johnny's waking up Zuby, going inside. Look at Zuby attacking the rim and one. Zuby waking up. Here comes the crowd, mate. Let's go. Like that is legitimate love for what I do and legitimate love for my craft. And I tap into that. And I actually feel uncomfortable if I have to sit there, even this interview, if I just had to sit there like this, it's not my natural physical disposition. I'm a mover. I talk with my hands. I'm from Brooklyn. That's just the way it goes. And I do think that plays on YouTube. And I'm not even doing it intentionally. I just think there's like, I don't know if you remember the show Three's Company. Remember Three's Company? Okay, sure. You do, right?
Yeah.
A little bit. So John Ritter, Jack Tripper, was a great physical comedian. Like, yeah, he delivered his lines very wittily, and he was on point, and he looked the part. But I think what made him special was the way he tripped and fell and recovered and got up and knocked over a bunch of pots and pans in the restaurant when he had the restaurant. And like, I think that plays, and I think that visual on YouTube, it is not just audio. It is not just hearing something. It is seeing what somebody's doing when they're delivering what they're delivering. So to me, it's a natural fit, and I think that's part of the reason why the clicks have been there, whether it was me and Sal or so far early on with BT Unleashed. It's a natural look as to how, wow, what does this lunatic look like when he's rifling off on this, or bagging on Joe Shane, or crushing the Knicks after getting smacked by 31, or getting on Hal or Cashman for not doing anything yet in the hot stove? What does he actually look like? Well, you get to see it.
I want to preface this by saying, obviously, you have a good relationship with Mike Francesa. I know you golfed with him over the summer. He came on the show with Sal before. You talked about meeting with him earlier in your career. There were those. I think this was like 10 years ago or so. It was before Mike had retired the first time.
Mm-hmm.
The reports of it was categorized as a screaming match. Between you and Mike. I think it was Marchand that reported it. I assume it was Marchand that reported it, but it was
could have been Raceman. Could have been Raceman back then.
Yeah, maybe it was Raceman.
Could have been. Yeah.
But it was before Mike retired the first time. I think you had said you did an interview with somebody, and you had said that you weren't chasing Mike's job.
Yep.
And then this somehow reportedly turned into a screaming match that like people heard outside at the halls of WFAN. So was that a true story?
100% true. I'll actually tell you I'll tell you what, you want to hear what happened?
Yeah, I do want to hear what happened.
Okay. Of course you do. Oh no, true story. Hey, good conversation. No, of course I'm going to tell you what happened. Now, one thing, I don't want to overstate my relationship with Mike. I respect Mike. Like, I'm not texting him. He did take us to play golf, almost killed me when he drilled me with a hosel shot out of the bunker. I mean, honestly, JJ was next to me. That thing hit me right here. And I've said this, I said it the next day. As I got a little deeper into the round, I'm like, if that would have hit me in the temple or the face, I would have been airlifted off of the green. Like, it would have been a very dire situation. I mean, it was funny, but it wasn't. And it was
funny because you were okay, but yeah, that could have definitely imagined.
It was terrifying, right? Harrowing is the word that I'll use. So anyway, Mike, when I left 1050, I remember seeking Mike's advice, right? Hey, Mike, I've got, what do you think? I got this opportunity maybe in Philly, San Francisco, and I leaned on him because he's Mike Francesa. And, I valued that, right? I remember when I got the job with Tiki, and it's still over on one of those bookshelves in my office, and I'll always save it. He wrote me a handwritten letter and mailed it to my home, wishing me best of luck on the fan, how it's the best real estate in the business. And I remember he ended it with, show by show, week by week, book by book, something like that. Just be you and good luck. Really classy gesture. Okay. So I had never had and of course I had lunch with him, as I told you that story when Russo left. So it was now it wasn't a jovial, like Mike's not the kind of guy, yo, Mike, what's going on, man? How you doing? I don't know Mad Dog that well, but I would think that Chris would be a little bit more like that. Mike is a little more to himself, whatever. And I remember coming in, I was on a board. I go away every year, play golf with a bunch of guys, and I was in Myrtle Beach, and the Post did like five questions. I think that's what it was, Q&A. And one of the questions they asked about, Mike's job or whatever. I was doing the national stuff, and I said, hey, I'm not. And the quote was, of course, why Tierney's not chasing Mike Francesa's throne. I think that's what it was, something to that extent.
Yeah, that was the headline.
Yep. Right? Very powerfully built in bold, italicized. I'm like, so I didn't think anything of it because I didn't say anything disparaging because Mike's been good to me, right? So I come in from the trip, and he's in his office, and I'm coming in to do this is when Teak and I are doing afternoon drive, so we're on CBS Sports Network. We're going on at 3. I guess he's going on at 1, whatever, and I would get there a little bit early. So Mike's in his office, right? And like where you walk in the door at FAN, Mike's old, which is now Boomers, you could see Mike, right? Anyway, I walk in. He goes, "Hey," he goes, "Come here." I'm like, "Oh, that's nice. Mike wants to talk. There you go." Like that didn't really happen much. So I was actually kind of excited, right? And I walk in, and he just unleashes on me, man. He unleashed on me. He took it the wrong way. I don't know if he thought that I was minimizing the real estate of afternoon drive at WFAN, which all I've done my whole life is pay homage to it. It was the exact opposite. The reason why, and I'll tell you how the explosion in a moment, but the reason why I said I'm not chasing his throne anymore, I was at a point in my career where up to that point, everything that I was doing was based on got to get to FAN, got to get to afternoon drive, got to get to FAN, got to get to afternoon drive. And I thought it was a little bit of an unhealthy chase where I was maturing, I was growing, I was doing well, and I was saying, all right, listen, you can't control that they hire you. Control what you can control, do your best shows, and if it comes your way, go for it. That was basically the gist of my response to that. I basically said, I'm not chasing the throne anymore. I'm trying to live in the moment, something like that, right? So, and it really was all laced with respect, not an ounce of shade at all. So when I go into his office, he went from 0 to 100 immediately. I mean immediately. Who had F-bombs flying? I actually remember him grabbing a stack of papers like, these are ratings, this is what it's like to be number one. And like, it's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Now, I don't give a shit who you are. You're not going to talk to me like that. That's just not going to happen. Like, I'm going to give you, all right, if you think that I messed up, I'm going to give you the latitude to express yourself. But if you think that I'm going to be on the other end of this tirade for another 30 seconds, you are sorely mistaken, because that's not happening. I've just got too much pride for that. I don't care who you are. So I fire back, and I'm not going to tell you what I said, but I fired back. And I walked out, and I thought I had the last word, like F-bombs both ways. I mean, loud F-bombs. It's ugly. And now the newsroom, and this is when the newsroom was still bustling, and now it's been, kind of a skeleton crew, unfortunately, now these days, but it was packed. Chernov's down one end, Spitz, who was the boss of CBS Sports Radio, and my immediate boss down on the other end. Now, I guess I come flying out of his office, if I can recollect properly. And then I think, and I don't want to misrepresent Mike here, but I next thing I know, he's next to me, and I kind of blacking out because I'm pissed at this point. And next thing I know, we're in Eric's office, right? And I have never been in Eric's office with Mike in my life, ever. I've been in Eric's office every day, shooting the shit about the show, never about Mike. So now we're both, and we are just still screaming at each other. And it's just not ending. And like, again, F-bomb, 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 F-bomb. I'm like, I'm saying to myself, what in the world is going on? Like I walked into a volcano, right? Now, I'm saying to myself, all right, man, I remember walking out. It finally Spitz diffused it. I guess Mike went his separate way. I went my separate way. And I was raging, right? So I go outside and I may have called my agent. And I called my wife. I'm like, you never guess what just happened, right? So was it Raceman? Somebody from the media reached out to me. Of course, somebody from the newsroom obviously leaks it. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't unhear what you heard and you couldn't unsee what you saw. So if it wasn't Raceman, again, I'm not trying to it was a while ago. I thought it was Bob. I remember talking to him outside around the corner from 345 Hudson. And I'm like, you know what? Look, I'm trying to diffuse this. Like, I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to add fuel to the fire. I didn't want that to happen. I didn't make that happen, and I'm not going to make it worse. Like, that's always kind of my mindset, like damage control. Like, I'm from the school, it's okay to get loud. It's okay to disagree. I'm not going to go run into the papers. And, in hindsight, maybe it would have elevated my profile. Again, I don't know. I don't know, but that's not the elevation I was looking for. So my goal was to quiet it, and then rather than just throw gas on it. And that's what I did. Eventually it went away. And it was obviously, if I remember, pretty uncomfortable being around Mike. I don't even know like what the first, there weren't many words after it. I could promise you that. But I know when he did his last show before he came back, right? I remember I'm like, I got to get a picture with him. And I remember it being like a little uncomfortable for me. Maybe not for him. He probably didn't even care. I did, a little bit still, a little. And, I remember taking the picture and putting it on social media, just on Twitter, and legend, something positive because he is. And that's how I operate. Like, but I was not going to sit there, that level of disrespect. I don't care who you are. It just can't happen. And, it happened, whatever. We're grown men, big boys, you move on. But, that's why the funny thing was when people who remember that story, and obviously you're one of them and you're not alone, a lot of people like, I was trying to get you back all those years, trying to kill you on the golf course. when he laced that, whatever hosel shot it was at me. But I'll tell you, we sat at the country club after it for about 2 hours, and Mike held court talking about the early days, like Jimmy the Greek and Brent Musburger and CBS and early days with Dog, and it was amazing. Got great respect for Mike. I really do. I feel compelled to say that. But it was a situation, and I mean it. Like, if I didn't, I wouldn't. It was a situation that, on a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of ugliness, it was a 10. There wasn't like a 7. It got hijacked. There were a couple of words. It was as loud and as violent. And I just didn't give a shit who saw it. I didn't care who heard it. It was just tunnel vision with Mike, and then Spitz a little bit as the referee, I guess.
As a longtime New York sports radio listener, like I always enjoyed the radio drama. Like I loved the drama between Mike and Chris, the drama between Mike and even Michael K, and Mike and Craig for a while.
Yeah.
Did you mind being kind of pulled into any of that? Because I know Gio kind of seems like he enjoys stirring the pot a little bit at WFAN. Did being in it bother you?
No, I just really never played that game. Like I don't have a lot of interest in doing that. Like, that is not anything that's very appealing to me. Like, if you think about like radio beefs and I'm not talking about the ratings, because by the time I got to FAN, like the other station was, and then now they're on AM and they've got some good talent. I'm not saying they don't, but like they don't even get ratings anymore. So it's a totally different dynamic, right? So I just, to me, like the nonsense or the drama, I was never interested in that. If you look at my career, I really don't have a radio beef, which is pretty interesting because I'm a very straightforward, very aggressive person. But I also think that, I don't delve into those waters. So nothing really comes my way that I would have to really react to. Listen, I remember, now there are times, I'll jump into something a little bit. Like there was a time with Stugotz, right?
Yep.
Stugotz was coming in, and was this after? Yeah, I guess Spike was gone. And I think Boomer was off, and Stugotz was doing, he was working with Gio, maybe for a week, whatever. And for a couple of days, Stugotz, he was actually pretty close to becoming the program director. And he's got great affinity for the station, which I get. A Long Island guy. I know he's in New York. I think it's Long Island. So I had no problem with that. Long Island, right? So I get that, right? But, he's coming on the air, and he's talking about basically taking people's jobs. And I'm saying to myself, well, to me, that's not radio drama. That's not like, locker room nonsense. That's unacceptable. That's somebody who's coming into our house who is very cavalier, even if he's kidding. And listen, in jest, there's truth. But to me, that had to be stopped. And I thought somebody had to check that. And I had no problem. I'm not saying I was Tony Tough Guy, but like somebody had to get in that room and, face to face, at least on the air, be like, dude, what are we doing here? And, of course, Greg's stirring the pot, making good radio, which he's good at. And I'm just like, dude, I don't hate you. I think Stugotz even kind of broke the ice like, oh, this guy hates me, dude. I don't hate you. I just don't like what you're doing. I honestly don't like what you're doing. You're coming in here and it's on YouTube. It's His Funny. You're coming in here day after day talking about taking people's jobs. I mean, dude, we got families. This is the real world. I know that you mess around with Lebitard, who's got a successful following, and that's your kind of show. That's not my kind of show. Like, that's not my kind of thing. Like, if you want to make fun of the way, somebody talks or the way somebody looks or some stupid erroneous take like we've all had, all right, that I don't even do that, but that's fine. If that's what you want to do, go for it. that just bothered me. Like, that was not me. Let me jump in and have a little fun. Yeah, when I'm in there, I'm going to make sure I have enough fun so I don't come across like a raving lunatic. But I was also there with a purpose. Like, somebody at the station, and what's my reward? I'm gone. Somebody from the station, I thought, had a responsibility to step up for the other people at the station. And I had no problem doing it. But, then I talked to him off air, and he's a good dude, and I enjoyed, we were bouncing around the segment. Like, again, there was no problem, but I just thought that I had to address that. And I did. But the other stuff, like, I've never been interested in that. I don't know why. And whether you want to classify it as gossip or, a little smoke or whatever, like radio drama, my singular mission was to get on the radio and talk about sports. Like, that's what I do. Now, as I've gotten older and as I've evolved, and obviously the medium's changed a bit. I mean, just go back to listen to some of the things that Sal and I talked about, like when we talk about our wives and our families. And I mean, good God, he knows. Growing up, I was a nut. Like, I've done stuff that he's like, wow. He's like, you actually did that? I'm like, yeah, that's what we did growing up in Brooklyn. Sure. So it's not that I wasn't like exposed to some stuff, and not that I didn't have some moments where I was like, wow, when I look back and I'm like, geez, you're really lucky you got out of that situation. I mean, it's actually scary to think about it now, but that was the time that I was growing up in. And but I've always kept my singular focus on sports, and I've learned to humanize myself. I've learned to laugh at myself, which is something, quite frankly, I had to do. I do think early on, I took not myself too seriously, because I don't take myself seriously at all. I take my job very seriously. And when I think that got in the way of me showing my natural personality, which I think is kind of loose and kind of fun, obviously, with the intense sports talk where it's merited. So I think that I've changed there. I think Sal was good for me in that regard. Like, if you told me before I went to FAN that there would be videos that will never go away of me dressed up as Gold Dust and me dressed up as Brother Love, like, I'd be like, what? Something seriously went wrong in my career. But I'm like, you know what? It's funny. I lost a bet. He's dressed like Doink the Clown. Hopfish dressed like somebody. You didn't win. You got to do it. And I don't know. Not that I wouldn't have done it 10 years ago, but I don't know that I would have leaned into it the way that I did. I just went all in. I think I've let some of my barriers down a little bit. But the stuff that you just asked me about, it never bothered me. Did I love getting pulled into the conversation about getting thrown out of a Little League game? No, I didn't. The thing that bothered me about that, now the Post wrote about that. A caller called into their show. They talked about it. The problem that I had with that was that it really was a complete misrepresentation of me as a man. And that was bothering me. And I'm sitting there saying, all right, people calling, people checking in on social media. Oh, did you get thrown out of a 10U game this weekend? Hey, let me ask you something. For those who were throwing those stones, you ever donate your time to coach? Have you ever designated whatever free time you have to go and coach starting at the age of 6 when they're running around like lunatics? You ever do that? Honestly, you ever do that? Have you ever devoted time to like real skill development and have real conversations with these kids who might be having an issue at school or at home? Like, I take that I take very seriously. Like, I love it, man. And the way it was being portrayed by some was that, the same guy who's, ripping away on Brian Cashman is the same unhinged lunatic who got thrown out of a 10U game. And I'll tell you what I didn't do, and I almost did it, but I didn't do it because I wanted it to go away. I actually had the video, and you see me getting thrown out, and it is as benign a moment as you could possibly have. I did not earn whatever vitriol by some that I got, but I thought rather than just keep going with the story, I'm not going to go with it. I'm going to try to diffuse it again. And, I had to make a few things clear. It wasn't a woman umpire who threw me out. I didn't throw an F-bomb at the umpire. Like, these are things that I had to say, and I addressed it when I came back from vacation. But so that bothered me, being in the news cycle for something that I really care about, and really one moment, I wasn't completely without fault. I'm not saying that. But for all the good that I've done, I'd like to think, like, trying to enrich young kids' lives, make them better ball players, make them better people. I mean, that's a lot of hours. That's multiple basketball teams. That's, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 6 years coaching my son's travel team and my daughter's softball. And like, that's a lot of time to devote. And I don't mean just showing up like, hey, what are we doing? I mean, really going there with the intention to get better and to be disciplined and teach these young kids, both boys and girls, lessons. So that bothered me. The other stuff I couldn't care less about, whatever.
Yeah, and I'll say we wrote about that as well. I know I think it was the third time that there was somebody that called in, and Gio and Boomer kind of talked about it with a caller, just trying to get the story because you were on vacation at that time.
Yep.
So I think it was the third caller. That's when we finally wrote about it. And I tried to be careful about it, just knowing that you were on vacation. The one thing we did kind of take liberties with is we used the picture of you. You were in the middle of your Jets rant.
Unkillable.
Yeah, the unkillable. So that was the picture we paired with the headline.
Well, let me be honest. If I'm you guys and I'm writing that story, is there a better picture?
No, the picture was perfect. One? Yeah, that picture was perfect.
Come on, man. Wait, let me get this straight. So the guy who lost his mind and whatever he said, I'm talking about me, for 4 straight minutes, the day that Rodgers ruptured his Achilles and looked like an unhinged psychopath, got thrown out of a game. No, that is impossible to connect the dots. There's no way that's believable. But there are many sides to me. And that one got misrepresented and hijacked. And again, when you're a public figure, you deal with it. And it was a learning lesson for my kids. I'm like, I remember calling my son and I'm like, you see this? I'm like, I pulled up the article in the Post, right?
Yeah.
And I said, and he just turned 11, so he was 10. And I said, let me just explain something to you. Even though, you might want to be an engineer and a baseball player and all those things he wants to be, if you do something with a group of buddies in a year or two or you're older, guess whose name's probably going to be in the front of the article? Probably yours because of what I do. Yeah. You got to understand this is the world that we live in. And it was a teachable moment. And he was there, so he knew what transpired. I don't have to prove to him that I'm not talking about being a good coach in terms of winning, but always trying to do the right thing and being really invested in the job and trying to do right by a lot of kids. He knows that even at that young age. But those are moments that you try to teach, and those are moments that the other coaches weren't in the newspaper. The great guys. Somebody else got thrown out. My good buddy, he wasn't in the paper. Why? Because it's not on WFAN. I get it. It's all right.
Yeah. Well, I will commend you for putting all that time into coaching because I have 3 kids. They're younger. They're 3, 2, and I have a 5-month-old.
Oh,
yeah. So I don't know. On one hand, like I don't want to deal with the other parents, but at the same time, like I could also see myself in a couple of years, like watching the kids get coached. And like, if I feel like they're not with good coaches and if I think I could do a better job, then I'll be more enticed to step in. But
I would say this real quick. B, I would say this, depending upon how serious they are as athletes, like there's a point of expiration. And I'm a firm believer, you can't coach every team that your child's on. Like, I think you've got to have good separation. All right, daddy's coaching this team, so-and-so's coaching this team. You don't call me daddy, you call me coach. I don't mean when you're 6. Of course, you're going to call me dad.
Sure.
Dad, Ben. But you've got to eventually morph away from that. And, you've got a little teeny tiny finite window of being there and doing that. So even if it's soccer, like rec, I'm not even talking travel. Yeah. Even if it's rec soccer, T-ball, you get out there, you have that bond. It's not going to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. They'll never forget it. Never forget it. So if you can find the time from somebody who's done it and still does it on a very deep level, you don't have to go maybe as all in as I am and as I have. There's a middle ground. And if you can strike it, dude, there's not much better. I don't care if they get 3 hits, but, just driving in the car, with that little uniform, which is too baggy most of the time, and getting an ice cone or a Slurpee after a game and talking about the game. And there's nothing like it. And, you got 3 kids and they're young. God bless them. You get that once. So if you could carve it out, do it, man. I would say do it. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the advice there, and appreciate your interest in youth sports and coaching. BT, you were great. Thank you so much for doing the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure, man. I appreciate the journey. And listen, you got to write a piece at some point. All right, since you used the unkillable picture of me and you took your little shot there. Well, you guys have been fair to me. You guys have actually been really, really fair to me and really fair to the whole BT and South thing. I have read some of those stories. Those have come my way. And I have read some of those, and I thank you guys for your integrity and your transparency. There was no agenda. It was good, solid reporting. Now maybe, because you did have the unkillable picture, maybe we got to get a little YouTube article at some point.
Yes, I think we should, definitely.
Oh, good, man.
All right, that is Brandon Tierney.
Thanks,
I'm
buddy.
Brandon Contes. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast. Please also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page. But regardless of how you consume Awful Announcing and the Awful Announcing Podcast, thanks for listening and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.